At the intersection of ancient wisdom and contemporary psychology lies a remarkable discovery. The four classical elements provide not merely a metaphorical framework, but a sophisticated system for understanding human psychological functioning. What our ancestors intuited through careful observation of patterns in nature, modern psychology has begun to validate through research in neuroscience, cognitive science, emotional processing, and behavioral studies. The elemental paradigm translates seamlessly to our understanding of human psychology because it captures fundamental dimensions of experience that remain consistent across time and culture. The modern psychological framework. Earth embodies our physical foundation, stability, structure, practicality, and sensory experience. In psychological terms, it represents our capacity for embodied presence, reliable action, and concrete manifestation. Fire represents our energetic dimension, motivation, passion, transformation, and assertive expression. Psychologically, it governs our drive, courage, creativity, and capacity for change. Air corresponds to our mental functioning, thought, communication, perspective-taking, and conceptual understanding. In psychological terms, it represents our analytical abilities, verbal expression, and social intelligence. Water reflects our emotional reality, feelings, intuition, connection, and adaptability. Psychologically, it governs our emotional intelligence, empathic capacity, and unconscious processes. Unlike many contemporary psychological frameworks that artificially separate cognitive, emotional, physical, and motivational dimensions as distinct systems, the elemental model recognizes their fundamental interconnection. Just as the physical elements interact and transform one another in nature, these psychological elements function as an integrated whole, each influencing and modulating the others in a continuous dance of dynamic balance. This integration offers significant advantages over more fragmented approaches. Rather than treating thought as disconnected from emotion, or physical sensation as separate from motivation, the elemental paradigm acknowledges their inseparability while still recognizing their distinctive qualities. This holistic perspective aligns with cutting-edge research in embodied cognition, which demonstrates how thinking emerges from the interaction between brain, body, and environment rather than occurring as disembodied mental processes. The elemental model also transcends the limitations of trait-based personality systems by recognizing that individuals express different elemental proportions across contexts and life stages. While certain elements may predominate in one's natural constitution, all four exist within each person, offering potential for development and rebalancing throughout life. This dynamic understanding provides a more nuanced approach than typological systems that assign fixed categories, acknowledging both the stability of core tendencies and the potential for growth and adaptation. Most significantly, neuroscience increasingly validates the elemental paradigm's fundamental insight, that our psychological functioning emerges from integrated systems that correspond remarkably well to the four elements. The sensoromotor and interoceptive networks that govern embodiment and physical self-regulation align with Earth's domain. The reward pathways and motivational systems that drive purposeful action correspond to Fire's energetic dimension. The executive function networks that facilitate analytical thinking and communication reflect Air's cognitive aspect. The limbic system and emotional processing centers that create feeling and intuitive knowing mirror Water's fluid dimension. These correspondences suggest that the ancient elemental framework wasn't merely a primitive precursor to modern understanding, but an elegant recognition of patterns fundamental to human experience, patterns that contemporary science is rediscovering through different methodologies and conceptual frameworks. Earth represents our most fundamental psychological dimension, the embodied physical foundation upon which all other aspects of experience depend. Neurological foundations, the importance of interoception and proprioception. The neurobiology of Earth begins with interoception, the perception of internal bodily states, and proprioception, awareness of body position in space. These receptors detect subtle changes in blood pressure, organ distension, chemical composition, temperature, and other physiological parameters, transmitting this information via dedicated neural pathways, primarily through the vagus nerve and spinal afferents, to the nucleus tractus solitarius in the brainstem before reaching the insular cortex. fMRI studies have identified distinct insular activation patterns for different bodily sensations, with anterior portions processing emotional salience of these signals, and mid-posterior regions handling the primary interoceptive mapping. Proprioception functions through specialized sensory receptors called muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs that continuously monitor muscle length, tension, and joint position. These mechanoreceptors transmit information via large-diameter AA and AB fibers to the dorsal column nuclei in the medulla, which relay signals to the thalamus and ultimately to the primary somatosensory cortex in the post-central gyrus. Beyond these basic sensory networks, Earth's neurological dimension includes the neural circuits governing physical safety and security. The dorsal vagal complex, comprising the nucleus tractus solitarius and dorsal motor nucleus of the vagus nerve, regulates immobilization responses when threat exceeds capacity for engagement. The ventral vagal complex, centered in the nucleus ambiguus, enables social engagement and calm states through parasympathetic regulation of facial expression, vocalization, and cardiopulmonary function, what polyvagal theory developer Stephen Porges terms the social engagement system. This differentiated processing creates what neuroscientist Antonio Damasio calls somatic markers, physiological sensations that inform decision-making by providing embodied feedback about potential choices, often operating beneath conscious awareness, yet significantly influencing behavior. Parallel information travels to the cerebellum via spinocerebellar tracts, creating a comprehensive neural map that coordinates movement through space without conscious monitoring. Psychological aspects, security needs, practical thinking, boundary setting. Earth's psychological aspects manifest through several interconnected dimensions. Embodied presence forms Earth's core psychological quality, the capacity to fully inhabit one's physical experience rather than being disconnected from or at odds with bodily reality. Practical intelligence represents Earth's approach to problem-solving, concrete results-oriented thinking focused on what actually works rather than what should theoretically succeed. This pragmatic orientation values tangible outcomes over conceptual elegance, direct experience over abstract theory, and proven methods over untested innovation. Security needs reflect Earth's concern with fundamental stability, the requirement for sufficient material, structural, and environmental predictability to function effectively. Boundary setting provides Earth's protective function, the capacity to establish and maintain appropriate limits that safeguard resources, space, time, and energy. These psychological and physical boundaries create the necessary containment for sustainable functioning, preventing depletion through excessive demands or intrusions. Earth energy expresses behaviorally through several characteristic patterns. Consistent routines provide external structure that supports reliable functioning, creating rhythmic patterns that conserve decision-making energy while ensuring essential needs receive regular attention. These routines establish a dependable framework within which spontaneity can safely occur. like riverbanks that channel water's flow without stopping it. Resource management reflects Earth's stewardship function, the careful allocation of finite resources like time, money, energy, attention, and material goods. This allocation balances current needs against future requirements, immediate desires against long-term sustainability, creating a foundation for ongoing sufficiency rather than cycles of abundance and scarcity. Physical self-care manifests Earth's embodiment aspect through concrete practices that maintain bodily well-being, proper nutrition, adequate sleep, appropriate exercise, timely medical attention. Unlike aesthetic body focus driven by external standards, authentic Earth self-care responds to actual physical needs rather than social expectations, creating a sustainable foundation for overall functioning. The role of Earth in trauma. Response and recovery. Earth's stabilizing function plays a crucial role in both trauma response and recovery processes. During threatening experiences, disruption of Earth's security aspects creates characteristic symptoms, disembodiment, hypervigilance, or spatial disorientation. These Earth disruptions manifest neurologically as hyperactivation of the sympathetic nervous system, with increased amygdala responsivity and decreased prefrontal cortical inhibition leading to elevated cortisol and catecholamine levels. Neuroimaging studies show reduced activity in the medial prefrontal cortex during traumatic recall, with simultaneous hyperactivation of the amygdala and reduced hippocampal volume in chronic PTSD, a neurobiological pattern that prioritizes immediate survival responses over integrated functioning. Trauma recovery fundamentally involves Earth restoration, re-establishing safety, rebuilding connection with bodily experience, and recreating reliable structure. Evidence-based trauma treatments like somatic experiencing, sensoromotor psychotherapy, and trauma-sensitive yoga focus explicitly on these Earth restoration processes, systematically rebuilding interoceptive awareness, autonomic regulation, and proprioceptive stability through carefully titrated physical interventions that restore coherent bodily mapping. Fire represents our energetic psychological dimension, the catalytic force that transforms potential into actuality through passion, purpose, and directed action. In psychological terms, fire encompasses our capacity for motivation, self-expression, courage, and transformative change. It provides the activating spark that energizes other elemental qualities. The neurobiology of fire centers on the brain's mesocortical limbic dopaminergic system, a complex network originating in the ventral tegmental area of the midbrain that projects dopaminergic neurons to multiple regions, including the nucleus accumbens, amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. This system doesn't merely respond to pleasure, but generates motivational salience, the assignment of value and urgency to potential goals and actions. Optogenetic studies allowing precise manipulation of specific neuronal populations have revealed that dopaminergic VTA neurons exhibit phasic burst firing specifically during anticipation of rewards requiring effort, not primarily during reward consumption. This anticipatory activation creates what neuroscientists distinguish as wanting versus liking, separate neural processes that fire energy primarily correlates with the former motivational component. Beyond the dopamine system, fire's neurological dimension includes action initiation networks in the basal ganglia, particularly the direct pathway through the striatum that facilitates movement through disinhibition of the thalamus. Fire also expresses neurologically through the sympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, which operates through noradrenergic neurons projecting widely throughout the cortex and subcortical regions. This system increases heart rate, releases glucose into the bloodstream, dilates pupils, and redirects blood flow to skeletal muscles, preparing the body for active engagement rather than rest or retreat. Fire's psychological aspects manifest through several interconnected dimensions. Motivation and drive form fire's core psychological quality, the capacity to want something with sufficient intensity to overcome inertia and resistance. Unlike externally imposed obligation, authentic motivation emerges from alignment with genuine values and desires, creating natural momentum that sustains effort through obstacles and setbacks. Creativity and vision represent fire's generative aspect, the ability to imagine possibilities beyond current limitations and bring them into being through transformative action. This visionary capacity moves beyond improving what already exists to envisioning what might be, combining imagination with the courage to actualize new forms. Assertiveness and boundaries reflect fire's protective function, the capacity to define and defend personal space, needs, and values when threatened or violated. Unlike aggression aimed at dominating others, healthy assertiveness simply ensures that one's legitimate requirements and limits receive appropriate respect. Desire and passion embody fire's animating energy, the capacity for wholehearted engagement with experiences, people, and pursuits that matter deeply. This passionate quality transforms activities from mere obligation into meaningful expression, creating the qualitative difference between going through motions and genuine investment. Fire energy expresses behaviorally through several characteristic patterns. Purposeful goal pursuit manifests fire's directional quality through sustained effort toward meaningful objectives, despite obstacles or distractions. Unlike impulsive chasing of momentary desires, genuine fire goal pursuit maintains connection with deeper values and long-term vision, creating persistence that transcends fluctuating motivation. Passionate engagement expresses fire's qualitative intensity through wholehearted participation in activities regardless of external rewards or recognition. This engagement creates what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow state, optimal experience characterized by complete absorption, intrinsic motivation, and sense of meaningful challenge, meeting adequate skill. Leadership and influence reflect fire's catalytic impact on social systems through vision sharing, inspiration, and courageous action that activates similar qualities in others. Unlike dominance based on positional authority, authentic fire leadership creates voluntary following through genuine resonance with shared purpose and values. Fire's transformative function plays a crucial role in both personal empowerment and intentional change processes. For individuals recovering from oppressive circumstances, trauma, or limiting belief systems, fire activation often provides the essential catalyst for breaking established patterns and claiming authentic agency. This reclamation typically begins with anger, the emotional signal that boundaries have been violated or legitimate needs ignored. Unlike chronic resentment that remains unexpressed, transformative anger creates necessary energy for changing unacceptable situations rather than passively enduring them. Many therapeutic approaches explicitly work with this fire aspect, helping clients connect with appropriate anger as a resource for empowerment rather than something to fear or suppress. Beyond initial activation, sustainable change requires fire's visionary aspect, the capacity to imagine different possibilities beyond current limitations. This imagination creates motivational pull toward a desired future rather than merely push away from a painful present. Finally, lasting transformation depends on fire's courage aspect, willingness to tolerate discomfort inherent in growth processes rather than retreating to familiar limitations when challenges arise. VO, air, the psychology of thought and connection. Air represents our cognitive psychological dimension, the invisible yet powerful force that enables understanding, communication, and perspective-taking. In psychological terms, air encompasses our capacity for analytical thinking, verbal expression, social intelligence, and conceptual flexibility. The neurobiology of air centers on the prefrontal cortex, particularly its dorsolateral regions responsible for working memory, cognitive flexibility, and abstract reasoning. These neural networks enable our distinctively human capacities for planning, problem-solving, and simultaneous consideration of multiple perspectives. This process, termed cognitive control by neuroscientists, is the ability to override automatic responses in favor of goal-directed behavior. Advanced neuroimaging techniques reveal that working memory depends on sustained activity in recurrent microcircuits in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. These circuits maintain representations through persistent neuronal firing patterns, creating the neurological foundation for holding multiple concepts in mind simultaneously. These circuits are facilitated by NMDA receptor-dependent glutamatergic transmission and modulated by dopaminergic D1 receptor activation, a prerequisite for complex analytical thinking. Ayer's verbal dimension operates through an integrated left hemisphere language network including Broca's area for speech production, Wernicke's area for language comprehension, and the arcuate fasciculus, a white matter tract connecting these regions. This network facilitates the uniquely human capacity for symbolic communication that transcends immediate experience, allowing transmission of knowledge across generations. Beyond these specific regions, Ayer functions through distributed attentional networks, particularly the frontoparietal control network that couples with either the default mode network or the dorsal attention network. This flexible coupling enables the dynamic shifting between different cognitive modes essential for integrated understanding. Psychological aspects: analysis, curiosity, communication, abstraction. Ayer's psychological aspects manifest through several interconnected dimensions. Analytical thinking forms Ayer's core psychological quality, the capacity to break complex wholes into component parts, identify patterns across seemingly separate phenomena, and construct mental models that organize understanding. Unlike rigid categorization, healthy analysis remains flexible, continuously refining models based on new information, rather than forcing reality to fit existing frameworks. Intellectual curiosity represents Ayer's exploratory aspect, genuine interest in understanding how things work beyond immediate practical necessity. This curiosity drives continuous learning throughout life, creating engagement with ideas for their inherent interest, rather than merely instrumental value. Communication skills reflect Ayer's connective function, the capacity to translate internal understanding into forms others can comprehend and to receive others' expressions with accurate interpretation. Unlike manipulation aimed at controlling others, authentic communication seeks genuine understanding across different perspectives and experiences. Perspective-taking embodies Ayer's transcendent quality, the ability to view situations from multiple angles, including positions significantly different from one's own natural standpoint. This capacity enables recognition of how varying experiences, values, and contexts create legitimately different interpretations of shared reality. Behavioral manifestations: learning, teaching, mediating, planning. Ayer energy expresses behaviorally through several characteristic patterns. Continuous learning manifests Ayer's growth orientation through ongoing acquisition and refinement of knowledge, skills, and understanding regardless of formal educational context. This learning occurs not just through structured study, but through curiosity-driven exploration, reflective experience, and dialogue with diverse viewpoints. Effective communication expresses Ayer's connective quality through clear articulation, tailored to audience understanding, active listening that seeks comprehension beyond mere waiting to speak, and dialogue that builds shared meaning rather than parallel monologues. This communication prioritizes understanding over agreement, connection over conversion. Mediation and bridge building reflect Ayer's perspective-taking capacity through facilitation of understanding between conflicting positions, translation between different conceptual frameworks, and identification of common ground without erasing legitimate differences. This mediation function enables cooperation despite diverse viewpoints and experiences. Air's clarifying function plays a crucial role in both meaning-making and liberation from limiting viewpoints. Human suffering frequently involves not just difficult circumstances but particular interpretations of those circumstances, stories about what events mean about oneself, others, and reality. Air's perspective-taking capacity enables recognition that these interpretations represent constructed meanings rather than objective reality. This understanding forms the foundation for cognitive approaches to psychological healing, recognizing how automatic thoughts shape emotional experience, how core beliefs create self-fulfilling prophecies, how narrative frameworks determine which aspects of experience receive attention while others remain invisible. By bringing these interpretive processes into conscious awareness, Air creates the possibility for choosing more constructive meanings rather than automatically accepting habitual interpretations. Neuroimaging research demonstrates that cognitive reappraisal, the deliberate reframing of emotional situations, activates the lateral and medial prefrontal cortices while simultaneously modulating amygdala response, providing neurobiological evidence for Air's capacity to transform emotional experience through changing cognitive framing. Water represents our emotional psychological dimension, the flowing depth that gives resonance and meaning to experience through feeling and intuitive knowing. In psychological terms, water encompasses our capacity for emotional awareness, empathic connection, intuitive perception, and adaptive fluidity. The neurobiology of water centers on the limbic system, a phylogenetically ancient network of interconnected subcortical and cortical structures including the amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, anterior cingulate cortex, insula, and orbitofrontal cortex. The amygdala serves as an emotional significance detector, with lateral nuclei receiving sensory input and central nuclei coordinating physiological responses. The basolateral complex shows particularly strong activation during emotionally salient experiences, creating what neuroscientists term emotional tagging of experiences. The hippocampus, crucial for contextual memory integration, maintains reciprocal connections with the amygdala via the entorhinal cortex, allowing emotional significance to enhance memory encoding while simultaneously providing contextual information that modulates emotional responses. Research demonstrates that limbic activation often precedes conscious awareness, with amygdala responses to emotional stimuli occurring within 150 milliseconds, significantly faster than cortical processing that enables conscious recognition at 500+ milliseconds. Water's intuitive dimension manifests neurologically through right hemisphere dominance for holistic pattern recognition, the brain's capacity to process multiple information streams simultaneously rather than sequentially. Beyond specific regions, water functions through interoceptive awareness, the neural mapping of internal bodily states that creates the foundation for emotional experience. This mapping occurs primarily through the anterior and mid-insula, which hierarchically integrates physiological signals from throughout the body. Water's psychological aspects manifest through several interconnected dimensions. Emotional intelligence forms water's core psychological quality, the capacity to recognize, understand, and work effectively with feelings in oneself and others. Unlike intellectual awareness about emotions, genuine emotional intelligence involves embodied recognition of feeling states as they occur, creating possibility for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Empathic connection represents water's relational aspect, the ability to sense and understand others' emotional experiences without merging identities or boundaries. Unlike projection that assumes others feel what we would in their situation, genuine empathy involves temporarily stepping into another's experiential world while maintaining appropriate differentiation between self and other. Intuitive perception reflects water's depth-knowing function, access to understanding that emerges through channels other than sequential, logical analysis. This intuitive capacity integrates vast amounts of information below conscious threshold, recognizing patterns and possibilities that analytical thinking might miss due to its necessarily sequential nature. Adaptive fluidity embodies water's flowing quality, the capacity to respond flexibly to changing circumstances without either rigid resistance or formless dispersal. This adaptability maintains essential integrity while adjusting form to meet actual conditions rather than adhering to predetermined plans regardless of their current effectiveness. Behavioral manifestations: empathy, adaptability, artistic expression, relationship building. Water energy expresses behaviorally through several characteristic patterns. Emotional authenticity manifests water's truth-telling quality through congruence between inner feeling and outer expression, neither hiding genuine emotions behind socially acceptable facades, nor exaggerating them for effect. This authenticity creates trust and connection in relationships, allowing genuine emotional exchange. Empathy reflects water's relational quality through genuine understanding and responsiveness to others' emotional states. This empathy creates supportive relationships that facilitate mutual growth and healing. Artistic expression embodies water's creative aspect through the use of art, music, dance, and other forms of creative expression to convey emotions and intuitive insights. This artistic expression allows for the communication of complex emotional experiences that may be difficult to articulate verbally. Relationship building reflects water's connective quality through the creation and maintenance of meaningful relationships. This relationship building involves active listening, emotional support, and the willingness to be vulnerable and open with others.